4 Apache widows begged, "Take us with you." The lone Cuman took all of them. His childhood had been marked by loss and hardship. Orphaned early, he learned the harsh lessons of survival before most children even understood the world around them. Every day was a battle against hunger, exposure, and danger. It was a life that hardened him, but it also made him strong, skilled, and independent in ways that few others could understand. He carried himself with quiet confidence, not seeking attention or praise, and he had come to know that trust was a rare commodity, easily broken and not freely given. The landscape that surrounded Cuman was both beautiful and unforgiving. Rolling hills stretched as far as the eye could see, dotted with forests that whispered ancient secrets in the wind. Rivers cut through the land like silver threads, providing both sustenance and danger. Wild animals roamed freely, each creature a potential threat or a necessary ally. Survival here required knowledge, skill, and instinct, three qualities that Cuman had mastered. He knew which berries were safe to eat, which plants could heal a wound, and which paths were safest to follow when moving through the wilderness. His life had become one of constant movement, never staying in one place for too long, always watching, always alert. Though Cuman valued his independence, there was a certain loneliness that came with it. Nights were the hardest. Sitting by a fire, listening to the howl of distant wolves and the rustle of leaves, he sometimes allowed himself a fleeting thought of companionship, though he quickly pushed it aside. People, in his experience, brought both comfort and complication, and the solitude he maintained kept him free from the troubles that so often followed others. Yet, despite this self-imposed isolation, Cuman's heart was not closed. It was simply cautious, waiting for a reason to open that he had not yet found. It was during one of his journeys along a narrow, winding trail near the edge of Apache territory that Cuman first heard whispers about the widows. Travelers passing through the region spoke in hushed tones about the women who had lost their husbands in recent conflicts. They told stories of bravery and loss, of husbands who had fought valiantly, and wives left to navigate a world that suddenly felt cruel and empty. These widows were not weak. They had survived unimaginable pain and were now struggling to maintain their lives on their own. Yet the tales hinted at desperation and vulnerability, and Cuman, despite his solitude, felt a flicker of interest and concern. Something about these women's stories resonated with him. Perhaps it was the shared experience of loss, or perhaps it was the recognition of strength hidden beneath the surface of grief. Cuman arrived at the small clearing where the widows were known to gather supplies. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the land. He watched from a distance as 4 figures moved carefully among the bushes and trees, collecting what they could find to sustain themselves. Each woman carried herself differently, yet all shared a quiet determination. Their faces bore the marks of hardship, but their eyes reflected resilience and a stubborn hope. The first widow, tall and strong, moved with careful precision, her hands skilled from years of labor. The second, smaller in stature, had a keen eye for detail, noticing things others might miss. The third, with a thoughtful expression, moved deliberately, her movements calculated and efficient. The fourth had an air of quiet strength, steady and unwavering despite the fear and uncertainty that surrounded her. When Cuman stepped forward, the widows immediately noticed him. Their initial reaction was a mixture of caution and curiosity. Strangers were rare in this part of the world, and few came with intentions that could be trusted. But there was something in Cuman's demeanor that softened their suspicions. He did not approach with weapons drawn or words of command. Instead, he moved slowly, deliberately, showing respect for their space. His eyes, calm and observant, met theirs with an unspoken understanding that he meant no harm. It was the first widow who spoke, her voice firm yet tinged with urgency. "Please," she said, her tone both a plea and a declaration, "take us with you. Don't leave us here alone." The words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of their situation. The other widows nodded in agreement, each silently reinforcing the same request. Cuman paused, considering their words. Solitude had been his companion for so long that the thought of taking on the responsibility of others felt overwhelming. Yet, as he looked at their faces, he could see that this was not a request born of whim or convenience. It was a matter of survival, of trust, and perhaps even hope. For a long moment he remained silent. The wind rustled through the trees, carrying with it the faint scent of earth and growing things. The widows shifted slightly, their eyes never leaving his, waiting for an answer that would determine the course of their lives. Finally, Cuman spoke, his voice steady and calm. "I will take you with me," he said. It was a decision made not lightly, but with a sense of purpose that surprised even him. There was no turning back now. The widows, their relief evident, quietly began to prepare for the journey ahead. Their departure marked the beginning of a journey, unlike any Cuman had undertaken before. He guided them through paths known only to him, teaching them to move silently through the wilderness, how to gather food without attracting attention, and how to stay safe when danger lurked nearby. Each widow adapted in her own way, learning quickly and observing closely. Their strengths became apparent as they traveled together. One could read the signs of the land with uncanny accuracy. Another had a gift for finding water and edible plants. The third displayed remarkable courage when faced with wild animals, and the fourth showed ingenuity in crafting tools and traps to aid their survival. As they moved through the rugged terrain, Cuman began to see the widows not as burdens but as partners. Each challenge they faced, crossing rivers, navigating dense forests, avoiding predators, became an opportunity for them to work together. The bond between them grew quietly, forged in shared hardship and mutual respect. Cuman, who had once relied solely on himself, discovered that survival could be stronger, safer, and even more meaningful when shared with others. The widows, too, began to see themselves not as helpless victims, but as capable and resilient women who could face the world with courage and determination. Evenings by the campfire brought moments of reflection and storytelling. The widows shared memories of their past lives, of their husbands, and of the challenges they had faced alone. Cuman listened, sometimes offering guidance or comfort, but mostly allowing them to speak. In these moments, the harshness of the world seemed to soften, replaced by the warmth of companionship and understanding. Laughter, once rare, began to echo softly through the trees, mingling with the crackling of the fire. The nights, though still cold and filled with uncertainty, were no longer as lonely. Through the weeks, the journey continued, each day presenting new obstacles and new lessons. Cuman taught the widows the value of patience, observation, and careful planning. They, in turn, reminded him of the strength that could be drawn from unity and shared purpose. The landscape, once a place of isolation, had become a canvas for growth, resilience, and unexpected bonds. Each sunrise brought a sense of possibility, and each sunset offered a moment to reflect on what they had learned and how far they had come together. Cuman's initial hesitation faded over time, replaced by a quiet determination to protect and guide the women who had entrusted their lives to him. The widows, once fearful and uncertain, had transformed into a capable and resourceful group, ready to face whatever challenges the wilderness might present. Their journey was far from over, but the foundation had been laid for a story of survival, trust, and the power of human connection in the face of adversity. In this way, the first part of their story closed not with an ending, but with the promise of what lay ahead. The lone Cuman, once entirely self-reliant, had discovered the unexpected strength that came from accepting the company of others. And the four widows, who had once faced a world full of uncertainty alone, had found not just a guide, but a protector, and perhaps even a new beginning in the most unlikely of places. The journey had begun, and with it, a tale of courage, companionship, and the enduring spirit of those who dare to walk through life together, even in the harshest of circumstances. The journey with Cuman had begun, and the four widows followed him with a mix of hope and uncertainty. Each step they took was a step away from the lives they had known, and a step into a future filled with unknown dangers and possibilities. The widows, though scared at first, had started to learn that survival required not just strength, but careful observation and trust. And Cuman, the solitary man who had once relied only on himself, was discovering a new sense of responsibility that he had never expected. The first few days of travel were filled with quiet observation. Cuman moved like a shadow through the land, his steps light but deliberate. The widows watched him closely, learning not just the paths to follow, but how to read the signs around them, the direction of the wind, the tracks of animals, the subtle shifts in the landscape that hinted at danger or opportunity. They learned to notice the small things, the rustle of leaves indicating a passing creature, the distant call of birds signaling safety or warning, the way the river's surface could tell them where it was deepest or most dangerous. Each lesson was vital, and each widow absorbed the knowledge differently, according to her own strengths. The tallest widow, Mara, had always been physically strong. She had spent her life performing labor that required endurance and determination. On the journey, she became Cuman's right hand in tasks that demanded strength, such as moving fallen trees to clear paths or carrying heavy bundles of firewood. Her confidence grew each day, and she began to feel useful again, no longer helpless or dependent. The second widow, Leora, was small and agile, with a sharp mind. She had a way of noticing details that others missed, like a hidden trail or a patch of edible roots. Her intelligence became invaluable to the group, helping them avoid traps or find food in unexpected places. The third widow, Selene, had always been quiet but brave. She was not the strongest or the fastest, but she had a courage that shone brightest in moments of danger. When a wild animal approached or a river's current seemed too strong, Selene was the one who stepped forward, steady and unwavering, inspiring others to follow her example. The fourth, Anya, had a cleverness that seemed almost magical. She could create tools, traps, or clever solutions from almost nothing. Her skills kept the group safe when the land itself seemed to conspire against them, and her quiet humor often lightened the mood during long, difficult days. Traveling together, they developed a rhythm. Each day began before sunrise, with Cuman leading the way through unfamiliar paths. He taught them to move silently, to listen carefully, and to trust their instincts. The widows gradually discovered that they were capable of much more than they had realized. Their fears, while never completely gone, became tempered by knowledge and preparation. And Cuman, too, felt a change within himself. The solitude that had once defined him now felt empty without the presence of others who depended on him. He had begun to care for these women in a way he had never allowed himself to care for anyone before. The journey was not without danger. On one morning, as they navigated a steep hillside, a sudden movement caught their attention. A mountain lion had been tracking them, unseen until that moment. Its golden eyes glinted in the sunlight, and its low growl sent a shiver down their spines. Cuman reacted immediately, placing himself between the lion and the widows. He whispered instructions, and the widows moved as he had taught them, silently and carefully. Mara grabbed a sturdy branch, ready to defend if needed. Leora found a way to distract the animal, throwing a small rock to draw its attention. Selene stood firm, her presence calm and commanding. Anya, thinking quickly, used a trap she had prepared earlier to block the animal's path. Together, they managed to drive the lion away without harm. This encounter, though frightening, was a turning point. The widows realized that their fears could be managed with courage, intelligence, and teamwork. They no longer saw themselves as weak or helpless. Cuman, too, was impressed. These women, who had once appeared fragile in the eyes of the world, had proven themselves resourceful, brave, and quick-thinking. From that moment, a bond of mutual respect grew stronger between them, a bond that would guide them through even greater challenges. Days turned into weeks. The landscape changed as they moved farther from the familiar territories of the villages. Forests gave way to open plains, and rivers carved deep valleys that required careful crossing. Food became scarce, and the group had to rely more heavily on the skills they had been learning. Cuman taught them how to fish with handmade tools, how to track small game, and how to identify roots, berries, and plants that were safe to eat. Nights were cold and sometimes lonely, but the widows huddled together by the fire, sharing stories and laughter that kept their spirits alive. Even in the toughest moments, small victories brought hope. One day, after hours of searching for water, Leora discovered a hidden spring tucked behind a cluster of rocks. Her eyes lit up as she called the others over. The spring was fresh and clear, and for the first time in days, they drank without worry. Mara gathered dry wood for a fire, and Selene used her strength to carry heavy containers of water back to their camp. Anya, seeing an opportunity, fashioned a makeshift filter to make sure the water was safe to drink. The simple act of finding water became a shared triumph, reinforcing their growing unity. The journey also tested their patience and emotions. There were moments when fear threatened to overwhelm them, when the vastness of the land and the unpredictability of nature made them question whether they could continue. On one particularly stormy evening, a sudden downpour soaked their camp, turning the paths into mud and making movement nearly impossible. Cuman worked tirelessly to protect the widows, helping them find shelter beneath the dense trees and creating makeshift barriers to keep the rain off. Mara offered her strength to move heavy logs for cover. Leora comforted the younger widows who were frightened. Selene stayed vigilant against the sounds of the forest, and Anya found ways to keep their fire alive despite the wet conditions. By the end of the night, the storm had passed, but the experience left them exhausted yet stronger in spirit. Through these trials, the widows began to understand that their survival depended not just on Cuman, but on each other as well. Each woman's strengths complemented the others, and together they could overcome almost any challenge. They began to see themselves as a team, bound by shared experiences and a common goal. Cuman, who had once believed he could survive alone, realized that life with others brought not weakness, but resilience. The journey also offered moments of quiet reflection. As they rested by rivers or on hilltops overlooking vast valleys, the widows shared their stories of the past. Mara spoke of her husband's bravery and the life they had built together. Leora remembered the days of quiet study and learning, and how she had hoped for a future full of discovery. Selene recounted moments of courage, both hers and her husband's, and Anya shared the ingenuity that had helped her family survive difficult times. Cuman listened to each story, absorbing the lessons and emotions, feeling a deeper connection with the women he had chosen to guide. As they moved forward, the widows began to anticipate challenges and plan ahead. They learned to prepare for sudden weather changes, to store food for emergencies, and to move silently when danger was near. Each day brought new lessons, new obstacles, and new opportunities to grow. The wilderness, once a place of fear and uncertainty, became a teacher, guiding them toward self-reliance, courage, and unity. Evenings remained special. Around the fire, the group would share meals, laugh softly, and reflect on the day's events. Cuman would offer guidance, sometimes telling stories of his own past, stories of survival, mistakes, and lessons learned. The widows listened closely, finding wisdom in his words and comfort in his presence. The firelight danced on their faces, highlighting determination, hope, and the beginnings of trust that had been forged through shared adversity. The journey of these 5 people was far from easy, but it was transforming them. Cuman, once a lone wanderer, discovered the strength that comes from connection, the courage that arises when responsibility is shared, and the joy that comes from companionship. The widows, once fearful and uncertain, found courage in themselves and each other, learning that they could face the wild, protect themselves, and even influence the outcome of events through intelligence, bravery, and teamwork. In this way, Part 2 closes with the group moving steadily forward, their bond growing stronger with each passing day. The journey was just beginning, and the challenges ahead were unknown, but together, they were ready to face whatever lay ahead. The widows were no longer simply survivors. They were adventurers, learners, and equals in a shared quest for safety, purpose, and a new life. Cuman had taken them with him, and in doing so, had changed all of their lives forever. The journey had now stretched into several weeks, and the bond between Cuman and the four widows had grown stronger with each passing day. They were no longer simply traveling together. They had become a small, cohesive group, each member contributing in her own way to the shared task of survival. The wilderness around them was both beautiful and merciless. Towering trees shaded them from the sun, but the dense undergrowth made travel slow and exhausting. Rivers, while a source of water, threatened with sudden floods or strong currents. Wild animals roamed freely, some curious, others dangerous. Yet despite these challenges, the group continued to move forward, guided by Cuman's experience and the widow's growing skill and courage. One morning, as the sun began to rise over the hills, the group faced a particularly difficult passage. A wide river blocked their path, its surface churning with icy currents that threatened to sweep away anyone who tried to cross without care. Cuman examined the river, scanning for a safe spot. His eyes flicked from rock to rock, noting the depth and speed of the water. The widows watched him carefully, learning not just his technique, but the thought process that went into each decision. Mara, with her strength, offered to test the rocks first, stepping cautiously into the water to ensure each step was safe. Leora observed the patterns of the current, pointing out areas where the water slowed, while Selene and Anya prepared ropes and makeshift supports to ensure stability. Together, they crossed the river, slow and steady, each step taken with care. When the last of them reached the opposite bank, there was a sense of quiet triumph. It was more than just crossing a river. It was a demonstration of trust, teamwork, and growing confidence. The widows were no longer passive followers. They were active participants, each one contributing to the safety and success of the group. Cuman watched them with a sense of quiet pride, recognizing how far they had come since the day they first met. The days that followed were filled with similar lessons. The wilderness was unforgiving, but it also offered opportunities for growth and learning. Cuman taught them to hunt with patience, to track animals by their footprints, and to listen for subtle sounds that revealed the presence of life or danger. Mara became adept at wielding a bow, her aim steady and precise. Leora learned to move silently, her small frame and sharp eyes allowing her to scout ahead without being noticed. Selene's bravery became a source of inspiration, encouraging the others to face situations that would have once terrified them. Anya's ingenuity allowed them to create tools, traps, and clever solutions that made life in the wild more manageable. One evening, as the group rested beneath a rocky outcrop, they noticed movement on a distant hillside. Figures appeared, moving cautiously but with intent. Cuman immediately recognized the signs. They were likely a group of warriors from a nearby territory, and their intentions could not be assumed to be friendly. He instructed the widows to stay low and quiet, moving them behind rocks and shrubs for cover. Mara's heart pounded, but she followed his instructions without hesitation. Leora scanned the area, noting the distance and direction of the approaching figures. Selene steadied herself, ready to act if necessary, while Anya readied a signal system they had improvised to warn each other of danger. The encounter tested their abilities and their courage. Cuman's strategy relied on patience and observation. He instructed the widows on subtle movements, signaling with small gestures and quiet whispers. The warriors approached, unaware that they were being observed, and Cuman used the terrain to their advantage. By the time the warriors passed, unaware of the hidden group, the widows had experienced firsthand the value of planning, restraint, and teamwork. It was a lesson they would carry with them for the rest of their journey. Danger could be managed not just with strength, but with intelligence and caution. As the journey continued, the group also faced challenges from the environment itself. A sudden storm swept across the plains, bringing heavy rain, strong winds, and cold temperatures that threatened to sap their energy and morale. Cuman led them to a sheltered area beneath a large rock formation. He taught the widows how to secure their shelter, keep their fire protected, and ration food to last through the difficult conditions. Mara's strength was invaluable in moving heavy rocks to create a barrier against the wind, while Leora organized their supplies to prevent spoilage. Selene helped maintain the fire, using damp wood and patience to coax flames back to life, and Anya devised a system to catch rainwater for drinking. By working together, they endured the storm and emerged stronger on the other side. Even during moments of danger, there were small joys that reminded them of life's beauty. The first rays of sun on a mist-covered valley, the song of a distant bird, or the discovery of edible plants brought a sense of wonder and gratitude. Cuman, who had once seen the world purely as a place of survival, began to notice these moments with a new appreciation. The widows, too, found hope and encouragement in the simple pleasures of nature. They shared laughter around the fire, told stories of the past, and discovered that even in a harsh world, life could hold moments of peace and beauty. Their journey also strengthened their emotional resilience. The widows learned to manage fear, frustration, and uncertainty through mutual support and shared experience. Mara's confidence inspired the others when fear threatened to take hold. Leora's intelligence helped them make decisions that reduced risk. Selene's courage reassured them when danger felt overwhelming, and Anya's ingenuity allowed them to solve problems creatively. Cuman, once a solitary figure, discovered the power of empathy and encouragement. He realized that teaching and guiding others could bring a sense of fulfillment he had never known in his solitary life. One particularly memorable challenge came when they encountered a dense forest with steep cliffs and hidden crevices. The path was treacherous, and one wrong step could have led to serious injury. Cuman led them slowly, carefully testing each step before moving forward. Mara cleared obstacles with strength and precision, while Leora scouted ahead to identify safe routes. Selene helped the group maintain morale, offering reassurance and encouragement when exhaustion threatened to take hold. Anya, ever resourceful, devised a method to anchor ropes for safety, ensuring that no one would fall. By combining their strengths, they navigated the forest successfully, learning once again that unity and collaboration were their greatest assets. As weeks turned into months, the widows' skills grew and their confidence blossomed. They were no longer dependent solely on Cuman. They had become capable individuals in their own right. Mara could handle physical challenges with ease. Leora could read the land and anticipate danger. Selene's bravery inspired action, and Anya's cleverness created solutions from nothing. Together, they formed a team that could survive almost any situation, supported by Cuman's guidance and the knowledge they had gained through experience. Through all these trials, moments of quiet reflection became increasingly important. Around the fire at night, they would share memories, hopes, and dreams. Mara spoke of her husband and the life they had shared, and how she hoped to honor his memory through her strength. Leora talked of her desire to learn and discover new things, imagining a future filled with possibilities. Selene recalled moments of courage and bravery, finding inspiration in both her own actions and those of others. Anya shared her creativity and ingenuity, finding joy in problem-solving and innovation. Cuman listened to each story, learning from them and finding comfort in their company. The firelight illuminated their faces, reflecting determination, hope, and the beginnings of a deep trust that had been forged through shared adversity. As Part 3 unfolded, the group also learned the importance of foresight and planning. They began to anticipate challenges, store food for emergencies, and prepare for sudden weather changes. Each day became a test of patience, skill, and endurance, and each success, no matter how small, reinforced their growing confidence. The wilderness, once a place of fear and uncertainty, had become a teacher, guiding them toward resilience, cooperation, and self-reliance. The transformation in each widow was remarkable. Mara, once unsure of her ability to survive alone, had grown into a figure of strength and leadership. Leora's intelligence and observation skills allowed her to contribute meaningfully to the group's safety. Selene's bravery inspired action, and Anya's cleverness provided solutions that often determined their success in difficult situations. Cuman, who had once valued only solitude, began to see the profound impact of trust, guidance, and human connection. The journey, though arduous, was shaping them all into individuals capable of facing the world together. By the end of Part 3, the group had endured storms, wild animals, treacherous terrain, and uncertainty, yet they had emerged stronger and more united than ever. They had learned to depend on each other, trust their skills, and face challenges with courage and intelligence. The wilderness had tested them, but it had also revealed their inner strength and potential. The bond between Cuman and the widows had become unbreakable, forged in shared experience, mutual respect, and the understanding that together they could overcome almost anything. Their journey was far from over. Ahead lay new lands, new challenges, and the possibility of even greater dangers. Yet the group moved forward with determination, guided by experience, trust, and the unspoken knowledge that they were no longer alone. Each step was a testament to their courage, resilience, and the power of unity. Cuman, once a solitary wanderer, had found purpose in guiding and protecting these women. The widows, once fearful and uncertain, had become strong, capable, and confident. Together, they were ready to face whatever lay ahead, knowing that the journey itself had already transformed them in ways they could not have imagined. The group had now traveled for months, and the wilderness, though familiar, remained unpredictable and dangerous. Cuman and the four widows had grown stronger and more skilled with each passing day, but they had also learned that the land itself could challenge even the most prepared travelers. It was during this stage of their journey that they faced a threat unlike anything they had encountered before, a rival band of warriors whose intentions were unclear and potentially deadly. The morning had started quietly, with the sun casting pale light over the rolling hills. Birds sang softly in the trees and a cool breeze rustled through the leaves. The group was moving cautiously, each step measured and deliberate. Cuman led them, his sharp eyes scanning the landscape for any signs of danger. Mara walked close behind him, her strength ready to respond to any physical challenge. Leora moved slightly to the side, scanning the terrain for subtle signs, a footprint in the mud, a broken branch, or a shift in the wind that might indicate movement. Selene and Anya brought up the rear, keeping watch and preparing tools that might help if trouble arose. It was Anya who first noticed the signs. She froze, her eyes narrowing as she pointed to faint tracks in the dirt. "We are not alone," she whispered, her voice calm but urgent. Cuman knelt to inspect the marks. He recognized them immediately, tracks of a group traveling together, larger than their own. The possibility of conflict was real, and it required careful planning. He instructed the widows to move quietly and stay close to cover. Every action had to be deliberate. Any mistake could be dangerous. As the group moved into a small grove of trees, Cuman signaled them to stop. He crouched low, observing the approaching warriors. They were skilled, moving with purpose, but they had not noticed the hidden group. Cuman explained the plan in quiet, precise words, emphasizing the need for patience and strategy. Mara's role would be to act as a distraction if necessary, while Leora would keep watch and guide their movements. Seleni's bravery was essential for quick action if the situation escalated, and Anya's ingenuity would allow them to create traps or diversions if needed. The warriors came closer, and tension built like a thick fog over the grove. The widows followed Cuman's instructions perfectly, moving silently and maintaining their positions. The group could feel their hearts pounding, each beat echoing the importance of the moment. Suddenly, one of the warriors paused, scanning the area. Cuman froze, signaling for everyone to stay still. Minutes passed, feeling like hours. The warrior moved on, unaware of the hidden group. Relief washed over them, but they knew the danger was not gone. More warriors could appear at any moment, and they had to remain vigilant. After the immediate threat passed, Cuman gathered the group and spoke quietly about the importance of preparation. He emphasized that they could not rely solely on luck or skill. They had to anticipate danger, set traps, and always have an escape plan. The widows listened intently, their eyes reflecting determination and focus. This was more than a lesson in survival. It was a lesson in courage, foresight, and the power of unity. In the days that followed, the group faced additional challenges. The warriors were not their only concern. Harsh terrain, unpredictable weather, and scarcity of food tested their endurance. One afternoon, while crossing a rocky plateau, Mara slipped and twisted her ankle. The pain was sharp, and movement became difficult. Cuman quickly assessed the situation, helping her to a safe spot and instructing the others on how to assist. Leora and Selene supported her physically, while Anya improvised a splint using branches and cloth. Despite the setback, Mara refused to give up, determined to continue the journey. Her perseverance inspired the others, reinforcing the lesson that courage and determination often mattered as much as skill or strength. Food became a significant challenge during this part of their journey. Rivers had dried in places, and game was scarce. Cuman taught the widows to forage more effectively, identifying edible plants and finding small game that could sustain them. Leora's sharp observation skills became especially valuable, allowing her to locate hidden sources of food. Selene's courage encouraged the group to attempt difficult hunts, while Anya's clever traps increased their chances of success. Even Mara, whose strength had often been the focus, learned to approach challenges with patience and precision rather than relying solely on brute force. One evening, as the group rested by a riverbank, Cuman shared a story of his past. He spoke of a time when he had faced a similar challenge alone, navigating through hostile territory while avoiding danger. The widows listened, captivated not only by the tale but by the lessons it contained. Cuman emphasized the importance of strategy, patience, and observation, lessons they had already begun to apply in their own journey. The story strengthened the bond between them, reminding everyone that experience, wisdom, and cooperation were as vital as physical skill. The turning point of this part of the journey came unexpectedly. While navigating a dense forest, the group suddenly encountered the rival warriors once more. This time, there was no opportunity for stealth or avoidance. The warriors had noticed movement and were approaching quickly. Cuman acted decisively. He instructed the widows to scatter strategically, each taking a position that would maximize their advantage while minimizing risk. Mara stood at a narrow pass, ready to block or redirect the enemy. Leora moved to higher ground, observing and signaling changes in the warriors' movements. Selene positioned herself in a way that could protect the group's rear, while Anya prepared clever diversions that would confuse or delay the attackers. The confrontation tested everything they had learned. The warriors approached with intent, but the group worked seamlessly together. Mara's strength allowed her to redirect attackers, while Leora's observation skills provided real-time information to Cuman. Seleni's bravery encouraged the group to hold their positions despite fear, and Anya's diversions, falling branches, cleverly placed obstacles, confused and slowed the warriors. Cuman's leadership tied all their efforts together, guiding their movements and ensuring that every action served a purpose. By the end of the encounter, the warriors had been successfully avoided or delayed, and the group emerged without injury. The experience was a powerful lesson in the importance of preparation, teamwork, and courage. The widows had transformed from passive followers into active, capable participants. They could think, act, and respond under pressure, their confidence growing with every challenge faced. Cuman, once a solitary figure, realized that his decision to take the widows with him had not been a risk but a source of strength. Together, they had become more resilient than any one of them could have been alone. The days following this confrontation were filled with reflection. Around the campfire, they discussed what had happened and what lessons they could take from it. Mara spoke of the importance of maintaining composure under pressure, while Leora emphasized observation and patience. Selene highlighted courage and initiative, and Anya focused on creativity and problem-solving. Cuman listened, affirming their insights and adding his own perspective. This exchange of knowledge strengthened their trust in each other, reinforcing the idea that each member's contribution was valuable and necessary. As the journey continued, the group also faced natural challenges. Harsh sun, sudden storms, and difficult terrain tested their endurance. Each obstacle required teamwork, creativity, and resilience. Cuman guided them through these challenges, teaching them to adapt, conserve energy, and use their environment to their advantage. Mara's strength often allowed them to clear paths or carry supplies, while Leora's observation skills helped them avoid hidden dangers. Selene's bravery encouraged them to confront risks when necessary, and Anya's ingenuity provided solutions to problems they could not have anticipated. Through these trials, the group became not only more capable but also more connected. They shared stories, laughter, and quiet moments of reflection. Even in the midst of hardship, they found joy in small victories, the discovery of a hidden spring, the successful capture of game, or the safe navigation of treacherous terrain. These moments reinforced their bond and reminded them of why they had chosen to travel together in the first place. By the end of Part 4, the group had faced both human and environmental threats and had emerged stronger, wiser, and more united. They had learned that survival depended not only on skill and strength, but also on trust, teamwork, and courage. Cuman, once a lone wanderer, had discovered the power of connection and shared purpose. The widows, once vulnerable and uncertain, had become capable, confident, and resilient. Together, they were ready to face the final challenges of their journey, armed with the knowledge, experience, and bonds they had forged along the way. The turning point of this part of their journey had not only tested their abilities but also revealed their true potential. They had faced danger and uncertainty, and through cooperation and courage, they had emerged victorious. The wilderness, once a place of fear and hardship, had become a classroom, shaping them into individuals and a group capable of overcoming almost any obstacle. As night fell, the group settled around their campfire, reflecting on what had occurred. Cuman's eyes scanned the horizon, alert as always, but there was a sense of satisfaction in his expression. The widows, tired but triumphant, felt a new confidence and pride in themselves and each other. They had faced danger and come through it stronger, wiser, and more united than ever before. The journey was far from over, but they had proven that together, they could survive and thrive in even the most challenging conditions. The group had traveled for many months, facing dangers, challenges, and harsh landscapes. Through all of this, the bond between Cuman and the four widows had grown strong, shaped by trust, teamwork, and shared experiences. They had learned to depend on each other, to communicate without words at times, and to anticipate one another's actions. Each member of the group had grown in confidence and skill. They were no longer just travelers trying to survive. They had become a family of sorts, bound by experience and mutual respect. As they approached a distant valley, Cuman's keen eyes observed the land ahead. It was a hidden place, surrounded by hills and dense forests, a place that could offer them safety and stability after so many months of constant movement. The valley had a small river running through it, providing fresh water and fertile soil that could support plant life. Trees offered shelter and shade, and open spaces provided vantage points to observe any approaching danger. Cuman recognized it as the perfect place for them to rest, build a home, and begin a new chapter. The widows shared his excitement. For the first time in months, there was no immediate threat of danger. Their journey, though still requiring caution and care, now had a clear goal: survival not just for the day but for the long term. Mara, ever strong and reliable, immediately began scouting the area for resources. She identified locations for firewood, places to gather food, and potential hazards to avoid. Leora, sharp-eyed and quick-thinking, examined the river, identifying safe points to cross and areas where fish could be caught. Selene assessed the valley for defensible positions, thinking ahead to protect them from possible threats. Anya, with her cleverness and ingenuity, began planning tools and systems to make life in the valley easier. Simple structures, traps for small animals, and ways to store food and water safely. Cuman guided them through the valley, teaching them how to use the resources effectively. He explained how to build shelters using natural materials, how to create a fire that would last through the night, and how to store water and food safely. The widows absorbed every lesson with eagerness and determination. They had come a long way since the first day of their journey, and now they were ready to put all their skills into practice. Their confidence grew with each small accomplishment, and Cuman could see that the women he had once thought fragile were now strong, resourceful, and capable of facing the challenges of the world on their own. The first few days in the valley were spent exploring and settling in. The widows worked together to build simple shelters near the river, using branches, leaves, and stones to create secure and comfortable spaces. Mara carried heavy logs and branches, Leora organized and planned the layout, Selene helped with lifting and shaping materials, and Anya constructed practical tools and storage solutions. Cuman supervised and guided, offering advice, but allowing the women to take the lead whenever possible. It was a process of teamwork and cooperation, each person contributing their strengths to the success of the group. Food was another challenge, but one that they approached with skill and determination. The river provided fish, which they learned to catch with simple nets and traps that Anya created. Small game, such as rabbits and birds, was hunted carefully, using techniques taught by Cuman. The women also gathered wild plants and berries, identifying what was safe to eat and what could be used for medicine. Their meals were simple, but they were nourishing, and the process of obtaining food together strengthened their bond. Each successful hunt or harvest became a source of pride, reinforcing their confidence and sense of accomplishment. Evenings were filled with conversation, laughter, and reflection. Around the fire, the group would share stories of the journey, recounting the dangers they had faced, the lessons they had learned, and the moments that had shaped them. Mara spoke of her husband and the life she had lost, finding comfort in sharing memories with people who understood. Leora shared her hopes for the future, imagining a life where she could continue to learn and explore. Selene recounted moments of courage and determination, inspiring the others to embrace their own strength. Anya spoke of her creativity and ingenuity, reminding the group of the importance of resourcefulness and thinking ahead. Cuman listened carefully, offering guidance, encouragement, and wisdom, but also learning from their insights. The valley, though peaceful, required constant attention. The group continued to refine their skills, ensuring they could protect themselves from both natural and human threats. Cuman taught the widows how to recognize signs of danger in the environment, how to respond quickly and effectively, and how to work together to maintain safety. Mara, Leora, Selene, and Anya applied these lessons diligently, and over time, they became experts in navigating and managing the valley. They could identify changes in weather, recognize tracks of animals, and anticipate challenges before they became critical. Their lives in the valley gradually took on a rhythm. Days were spent gathering resources, maintaining shelters, and exploring the surrounding land. Evenings were for reflection, storytelling, and sharing knowledge. Over time, the widows developed routines that allowed them to thrive. Mara's strength kept the shelters and storage areas organized and secure. Leora's observation skills ensured they could locate food, water, and safe paths through the valley. Selene's courage provided confidence in dangerous or uncertain situations, and Anya's ingenuity continued to create solutions that made life easier and safer. Cuman guided them, but the women had become independent and capable, ready to face challenges without relying solely on him. One day, as they explored a remote part of the valley, they discovered a small grove of fruit-bearing trees. It was a remarkable find, as the trees provided a source of nutrition that could supplement their diet and reduce the pressure of hunting and foraging. The group worked together to harvest the fruit, learning how to store it for future use and how to incorporate it into their daily meals. The simple act of gathering fruit became a symbol of their growing independence and success. It reminded them that their hard work and determination had created a life where survival was not just about enduring, but about thriving. As the months passed, the widow's confidence grew even further. Mara's strength was now complemented by her ability to plan and anticipate challenges. Leora's intelligence and observation allowed her to take initiative in hunting, foraging, and planning. Selene's courage inspired the group to take calculated risks, and Anya's creativity provided constant solutions for improving life in the valley. Even Cuman, who had once been the sole provider and protector, recognized that the women were now equal partners in their survival. Together, they had built a life that was secure, sustainable, and fulfilling. The group also took time to reflect on the journey that had brought them here. Around the fire, they discussed the dangers they had faced, the lessons they had learned, and the moments that had defined their journey. Cuman spoke of his own transformation, explaining how the widows had changed his life. He had learned that strength was not only physical, but also emotional and mental. He had discovered the power of trust, teamwork, and compassion. The widows shared their perspectives as well, expressing gratitude for the guidance, protection, and encouragement that Cuman had provided. They had grown from frightened, uncertain women into strong, capable individuals ready to face life with courage and resilience. One evening, as the sun set over the valley, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, the group sat together by the river. There was a sense of peace and contentment in the air. The journey had been long, difficult, and full of challenges, but it had also been transformative. The widows had discovered their inner strength, skills, and courage. Cuman had found purpose, connection, and the joy of guiding and protecting others. The wilderness, which had once been a place of fear and survival, had become a home, a teacher, and a place of growth. The valley offered opportunities for the future. The group could expand their shelters, plant crops, and create a sustainable way of life. They could explore the surrounding areas safely, gather resources efficiently, and continue to learn from the land. The hardships they had faced together had prepared them for almost anything. They had become skilled, confident, and united, ready to face whatever came next. Over time, the group built a sense of stability and routine. Each member had a role and responsibility that matched her strengths. Mara oversaw the physical work, Leora handled planning and observation, Selene maintained courage and vigilance, and Anya continued to innovate solutions for daily life. Cuman guided and advised, but also allowed them to take the lead, trusting in their abilities and judgment. Their life, though simple, was full of purpose, growth, and connection. As the story of their journey came to a close, it was clear that their lives had been forever changed. The lone Cuman, once isolated and self-reliant, had found companionship, trust, and meaning through his connection with the four widows. The widows, once vulnerable and uncertain, had become strong, capable, and confident, ready to face the future with courage and determination. Together, they had built a life of resilience, unity, and hope. In the quiet moments, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the valley grew still, the group reflected on the lessons they had learned. That strength comes not only from skill or experience, but from trust and cooperation. That courage is not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. And that true growth comes from overcoming challenges together. The journey had tested them, shaped them, and ultimately transformed them into a group capable of facing the world with confidence and hope. The story concluded not with an ending, but with the beginning of a new life. The valley offered safety, sustenance, and opportunity. Cuman and the four widows had survived the wilderness, outsmarted danger, and built a life together. Their bond, forged through hardship and trust, would endure, reminding them that even in the most difficult circumstances, strength, courage, and unity could create a future filled with hope and possibility.